affirmation by the council or a downvote, but the process of who will serve on the committee to do that, the application process, which Doreen you'll have to speak to, I believe, worked pretty efficiently, the application process. The venting and the interviewing, all that's clearly defined as how that would work out. So the expectation every single time an appointee is needed by the city is clearly defined, clearly promoted, and clearly built upon by the mayor and the president of council, and then either Cheryl or her appointee. The thing I like about that is when people go to vote for mayor and Gardner, they understand that that's one of the powers that they happen to be voting for. That's one of the things they've trusted the mayor to decide upon. And to take that away, I think that changes it midstream. People seem to believe, and I certainly have every reason to believe that as well, that Chris is very capable of making that decision. We'll take everything into play to make sure that the person brought to the table is the one that's going to serve best in that role. As long as they meet the two criteria, then we have the interview process to decide whose traits will serve best in that position, and he brings that appointee to the table. I don't want to take those pieces away from it. That's what the individuals and the public have voted on to allow Chris to do. And as a council, it was a unanimous vote in support of Christie to be council president, or understanding that might be one of the responsibilities on her shoulders, as well as we look at the appointment process with other positions. So I'm very comfortable with what we've done with others and would like to see us, and I believe when we talked about the body rules of procedure, we explained that that would be a living document that could be supported as we learn as opportunities to make it better. This is the first case I can think of where we can make it better almost immediately and formalize a process that's varied in the way it's been applied in the past, and now we can move forward with that singular procedure in place that everyone will have the clarity on, but then it still comes back to trusting the individuals who voted, the ones that have taken the time to go to the ballots and understand that they made the decision that they hope is going to work best for the city. That's kind of what I come to when the appointment side of things. Put trust in the people that the people have put the trust in and let it run the process as it works, because, again, I haven't found the process to be broken. I know you've brought it up, your example, but the example that you want to come to, or the example that always comes into play, would have been broken with a two-person quorum. So we aren't fixing the problem that would have fixed that isolated issue that we'll come back to as always being the example, so we still wouldn't have changed the way that would have played out. What we'll see moving forward is there'll be individuals that will move out, and we'll need to replace those seats. There could be some extenuating circumstances, unfortunately, where someone has to leave their seat because of other reasons. But in almost every case along the history of what Gardner's had and as a governing body, it's been single individuals. Very rarely has it been multiples. So you're changing the rules of the game that have worked pretty effectively so far for a single instance that probably won't replicate itself in the next generation or two. That's really all I've wanted to say about it, because I think that's the way it really needs to play itself out.
I do believe, thank you, Heath, I appreciate your input, and you've put some thought into that. I do think that we need to take a really hard look at 19. I think everybody in this body feels that we could take a really hard look at 19. There's some definite improvements that could be made to the ordinance. I just don't feel that it would be in the best interest of our city to repeal 19 in its entirety and then leave it vacant until we get around to fixing it. I think that would send a very bad message to the business community, to the economic development community, to our citizens. It would create some instability and some uncertainty that currently is not there. We may not like the process, but we know what the process is. If we repeal 19, we won't know what the process is 2 years from now. We haven't even begun to explore that yet. So that's why I would be against repealing 19 at this time.
You don't think the process could be solved in 2 years? I mean, do you think the business community is saying, oh my goodness, we're not going to come to Gardner because we don't know who's going to be representing us in 2 years? Number one, the business owners, many of them don't even live here. So they really, I don't know why you're even referencing them. I mean, we're here for the citizens who do live here.
If they're doing anything within the city limits, then absolutely they're going to want to know who they're dealing with.
But who gets the vote? I mean, the people that get to vote are the people who live here. So the business community, you know, can come and go and can adapt and change however it wants to. But the people who live here have a right to democracy. I guess that's the fundamental issue here. Is this a democracy or is it not? I mean, let's just take an example. You've asked for examples. Let's say Jeff Stewart is one of the appointees. Sorry, you'd have to leave one of the candidates for appointment. You'd have to leave your current job, of course, which you're probably not going to be willing to do, but this one doesn't pay nearly as much. but let's say that the mayor wants to appoint Tory Roberts, for instance. and everybody else in the council has reviewed Jeff's resume and says he's a much better fit. Now, how do we get the mayor under the current system to appoint Jeff Stewart? I mean, the first thing that's going to happen is he's going to bring his recommendation and say, I'm sorry, how do we appoint, Jeff Stewart, right. So the first thing he's going to do is bring his recommendation for Tory Roberts, right? Let's just, again, we're just picking a name out of a hat, and we all don't want that. So we under the current situation, under Charter Ordinance 19, he makes an appointment, and then we confirm or not confirm. Well, for the purpose of this example, let's just say we don't confirm. So then what happens? Jim, maybe you can help us out here. What happens with about the 45 days and the...
Then you have to pass a resolution saying his appointment was unfit.
That he is unfit or unqualified.
Yeah.
So what kind of unfitness can we use for that? I mean, unqualified means he doesn't live here, and that's obvious. I don't think the mayor would try to appoint somebody that doesn't live here. But what type of unfitness would we be talking about?
Be up to the council.
So, do you see some legal jeopardy in that, in saying someone is unfit? I mean, is it as the League of Kansas Municipalities has recommended, and is present in the memo that you asked for, and it says it would be a good move for the city. So, if we just look at Charter Ordinance 19, and we take away that one piece of legislation that gave one person an inordinate amount of power 10 years ago, which, by the way, coincides with what we now know BNSF stated in a article that was done with the Gardner News that exactly more than 10 years ago, they had started the conception for this intermodal. So it just happens to coincide, as do 4 other charter ordinances that gave or took away power from the council at that time. So just by removing that one charter ordinance, we go back to a system by state statute that says we only have to have 3 people to make legislation, which is more than half of the council members who create the policy in the first place. And it says that we all get to confirm, we all get to appoint. We all have an even vote. I guess, so I would ask Heath, for instance, why wouldn't you want an unequal vote?
I think I stated pretty clearly. I think those are the powers that the individuals in Gardner have voted upon in each election since that has happened. They understand that's one of the trusted powers that are there.
If I could. The mayor's appointment and time limits, 12-16-128. Don't want to talk about it in great detail, but I can tell you that separate from Charter Ordinance 19, we could exempt ourselves from that without actually repealing Charter Ordinance 19.
That's correct.
Is that not correct, Jim?
I haven't thought about that, but yes, that's probably correct.
Sure.
Okay.
Another ordinance.
Now, I know at last week's City Council work session, I was suggesting that we take a measured approach. Start right away with a pledge from the chair to ensure that we work on this month after month until we get it resolved. But I can't imagine that drafting a charter ordinance exempting ourselves from a state statute is going to be very complicated, and it would certainly solve one of the biggest problems that you have with Charter Ordinance 19 by its exclusion from that. Charter Ordinance 19, obviously written in 2002, the statute 12-16, 128 was established in 2008. But that would take away the option, the undemocratic option of a mayor just simply waiting out a council, or a council having to kick dirt on a prospective appointee, probably making it hard to secure appointees for the future if we did end up drafting such a resolution at any time in the future. I think that that's something that we could probably take action on quickly, and in the meantime, we could take Charter Ordinance 19